We all know Ian Brown for his searing, often scathing, and moved to laughter and tears articles for the Globe and Mail. In an age of 7-word novels, Ian is making sure that we never forget the joys of long form nonfiction. And his pieces have a kind of John McPhee, Calvin Trillin feel to them. This is no surprise. For the last 5 summers, Ian's headed the Banff Center's literary journalism program, where he recruits guest lecturers from everywhere, including the New Yorker's Calvin Trillin, to keep the flame of facts alive and well. Ian is also an avid backcountry skier, and his love of the mountains was rewarded by what must be the coolest journalistic title anywhere, the Globe and Mail's chief mountain correspondent. Please welcome the man who has turned observation into a literary art form, Mr. Ian Brown.
It's fantastic to be here this great evening. Great, very good-looking crowd. I must say, a great organizers, a great cause, my great old friend Tom, and even great sponsors, the TD Bank. I have been a customer at the TD Bank since I started out as a writer. Although on the income of a writer, I use the word customer very loosely. Even the $26 a month that the TD Bank charges me in bank fees has been a goad to production and an inspiration. But apart from being thrilled, this is also a nightmare for me because choosing a single piece of great writing is difficult for me, especially more harder than some of these others because I am actually a writer. And I have a very complicated relationship with great writing. I love great writing, but I don't really like great writing if I haven't written it. Actually, I kind of resent Ondaatje at the moment. I'm a feature writer at the Globe and Mail and the Abattoir, as I like to call it. And I mean, I know what great writing is. I first wanted to be a writer at the age of 12 when I read Ernest Hemingway's short story, Big Two-Hearted River, which is about a young guy who comes back from the war and goes fishing to calm down and become a human being again. And I remember when I read it, I thought, I feel like I'm that guy in the woods, in the river, casting. Like I feel like him. And it was so great a feeling that I thought, I want to figure out how to do that. How using, seductive and pleasurable prose, how I could describe human experience in such a way that I could make the reader feel like they were having the experience themselves, which is a very honorable goal. Unfortunately, I'm a journalist. So I spend my time mired in bad prose. Newspaper articles, many of which I've written myself. Government reports, which is, it's like the Mormon Bible, like chloroform in print, terrible. Political biographies. I'm currently reading Justin Trudeau's Common Ground, which is not bad. I mean, it's not fiction like Stephen Harper's Budget yesterday. They should actually enter that in the Giller in the fall. But none of it is really all that inspiring. And that is a problem because as a writer, you need to be inspired as a writer to take chances, to get out of the rut, to do new things. And it's so hard to write great prose. And most of the time it really doesn't work very well. And you get paid so little. And most of it does go to bank fees. So for me, it's not just a question of remembering some inspiring piece of writing that I read, that made me want to be a writer. I need to re-inspire myself every day. I mean, again and again and again to really keep going at this very difficult task, even at the base level I practice it at. And so, in the name of efficiency, I read a lot of poetry because the word to inspiration ratio is very high in poetry. So I would like to read you um, three fairly short poems um, that when I first read one of them made me want to be a writer, and two others that have reminded me more recently why I still want to be a writer, which is sometimes also a daily question. The first is by Philip Larkin. He's, as I know you all know, was an English poet. He was born in 1922. He died in 1985. He hated reading his work in public because he said it made him feel like he was traveling around pretending to be himself. Um, he was a bit of an ass, uh, but he was a brilliant poet. And this poem that I'm going to read you, the first time I read it, I was in high school, and I was very unpleasant 16-year-old. I think douche is the only word that I can use because I thought the world was responsible for my incessant unhappiness. Um, and I longed for the day when I could, escape the clutches of my imprisoning elders. And then I read this. I read this poem, which made me realize that it probably wasn't going to be that simple. Um, and it's called. It's a poem. I'm sure you all know. It's called High Windows. Uh, all right. High Windows. When I see a couple of kids and guess he's fucking her and she's taking pills or wearing a diaphragm, I know this is paradise everyone old has dreamed of all their lives. Bonds and gestures pushed to one side like an outdated combine harvester, and everyone young going down the long slide to happiness endlessly. I wonder if anyone looked at me 40 years back and thought, that'll be the life, no God anymore, or sweating in the dark about hell and that, or having to hide what you think of the priest. He and his lot will all go down the long slide like free bloody birds. And immediately, rather than words, comes the thought of high windows, the sun comprehending glass, and beyond it, the deep blue air that shows nothing and is nowhere and is endless. I've been reading that poem now for probably, I don't know, nearly 40 years, and I still don't understand it. I still don't know what the blue represents. I don't know if it's freedom. I don't know if it's the terror of not having something specific to hang on to. But this is the great thing about a really inspiring piece of writing that you really do not resent because it leaves you asking all these questions. That's the first poem. The well, this isn't going well. The second poem is one I reread often as well to remind myself to write about things that affect me in personal ways. And newspapers do not encourage this a great deal. But I figure if you only write about the stuff you're supposed to write about, that's supposed to be important, and you never write about what is honestly important to you, even if it's a secret, then you will forget about what is honestly important to you. And that's bad. That makes you feel empty. So I read, among other things, this poem by Tony Hoagland, who is a much lauded but very little known, that is possible in poetry. Um, American poet who lives in Houston. He's now 62, but he's been writing for a long time. It's from his book Unincorporated Persons in the Late Honda Dynasty, and it's called Personal. Don't take it personal, they said, but I did. I took it all quite personal. The breeze and the river and the color of the fields, the price of grapefruit and stamps, the wet hair of women in the rain. And I cursed what hurt me, and I praised what gave me joy, the most simple-minded of possible responses. The government reminded me of my father with its deafness and its laws. And the weather reminded me of my mom with her tropical squalls. Enjoy it while you can, they said of happiness. Think first, they said of talk. Get over it, they said at the school of broken hearts. But I couldn't, and I didn't. And I don't believe in the clean break. I believe in the compound fracture, served with a sauce of dirty regret. I believe in saying it all and taking it all back and saying it again for good measure. While the air fills up with I'm sorries like wheeling birds, and the trees look seasick in the wind. Oh, life, can you blame me for making a scene? You were that limousine, the moon climbing an on ramp of pearl gray cloud. I was the dog chained in some fool's backyard, barking and barking, trying to convince everything else to wake up and take it personal too. And that's it. He's good. I'm telling you. Tony Hoagland, you may not have heard it here first. And finally, I'd like to read you one last Tony Hoagland poem. And I had a million things I was going to read you. Honestly, there's so much by Ian Fraser alone that is Lamentations of the Father, his funny stuff where he rewrites the Bible as instructions to his children. You know, you got to get a hold of that. Anyway, but I decided I want to read you one last Tony Hoagland poem. It's about spring because it's spring. And spring. I know exactly. The first time I read this poem, I went out and wrote a story in the Globe and Mail about looking at women on my way to work and about whether that is acceptable behavior. And that was 2 years ago. And I'm still getting hate mail about that story. But I still love the poem and the way Hoagland writes about what is right there in front of him. It's almost a chronicle of the wonders of the actual world, and I'm afraid that still turns me on in a poem. Anyway, this is from his book, and he has excellent titles. What Narcissism Means to Me. And it's called A Color of the Sky. Windy today, and I feel less than brilliant driving over the hills from work. There are the dark parts on the road when you pass through clumps of wood and the bright spots where you have a view of the ocean, but that doesn't make the road an allegory. I should call Marie and apologize for being so boring at dinner last night. But can I really promise not to be that way again? And anyway, I'd rather watch the trees tossing in what certainly looks like sexual arousal. Otherwise, it's spring, and everything looks frail. The sky is baby blue, and the just unfurling leaves are full of infant chlorophyll, the very tint of inexperience. Last summer's song is making a comeback on the radio, and on the highway overpass, the only metaphysical vandal in America has written, "Memory loves time," in big black spray paint letters, which makes us wonder if time loves memory back. Last night I dreamed of X again. She's like a stain on my subconscious sheets. Years ago she penetrated me, but though I scrubbed and scrubbed and scrubbed, I never got her out. But now I'm glad. What I thought was an end turned out to be a middle. What I thought was a brick wall turned out to be a tunnel. What I thought was an injustice turned out to be a color of the sky. Outside the youth center, between the liquor store and the police station, a little dogwood tree is losing its mind, overflowing with blossom foam like a sudsy mug of beer, like a bride ripping off her clothes, dropping snow-white petals to the ground in clouds. So nature's wastefulness seems quietly obscene. It's been doing that all week, making beauty and throwing it away and making more.